was coming.
If you're trained and you can fight, then you can fight anywhere. But the reality is most people can't distinguish the difference between social violence and criminal-based violence. That said, there is an overlap, and the overlap sometimes tends to be the level of aggression and intensity. What are the 4 mistakes that trained fighters underestimate in a real fight? Keep watching. The first thing, real violent confrontations are much closer than most people anticipate. You see, in the real world, the bad guy will choose the time, the place to attack, especially when you're talking about criminal violence. Or you can even have a socially violent situation where the guy's watching you in a pub and waiting for the right time to sucker punch you. What he does is he sneaks up closely, just behind you, bang, lands that punch. That guy chose the time and the place to launch the attack. The closer you are, the less time you have. And distance and time buys you safety. But the problem is, as human beings, we are emotional animals. That reptilian brain takes over. Your rationality goes straight out of the window when you're having an argument with a stranger. First thing you do is you get into that person's face, or they get into your face. Either way, people's emotion often leads to this mistake. We're all foul to it. Even me. Best advice is to stay calm, but it's easier said than done when someone's screaming and shouting in your face. And I get it. Most people are easily distracted because they focus on the intensity of the confrontation. And the problem is when you get emotional, that allows someone to get into your personal space. Your emotions will have a dramatic effect on your ability to think and strategize your own self-defense. Bad guys pick the time and the moment to attack. And in that case, someone will work their way into your personal space. And they can do it through trickery and guile. It's that classic someone walking up to you and asking you what the time is. Do people do that anymore? I'm showing my age here. But it is that classic where someone comes up to you and asks you for directions or asks you for help. So a mistake people often underestimate is how close a confrontation or attack can actually be. And that could result from many reasons. 1, because of your emotions. 2, because you've been tricked. It's a mistake that a lot of people make. Even trained people make. Try to create distance. But if you've already allowed someone in your personal space, you have to take an angle, move to the side, be clever with your hands. Just don't allow this guy to come at you straight on or to stand in front of you straight on. The second mistake, real attacks come in faster and harder. Real violence is faster than what you see on Netflix. Actually, if you're like me and you fast forward through things, then probably not. You see, your attacker doesn't have to think about their defense. It's easier to go forward than to go backwards. It's easier to attack than to defend. Because when you attack, you're not thinking about anything other than harming the other person, blitzing that person as quick as you can. So in that context, the action of violence is far more intensive than most people anticipate. It's far quicker, far closer, primarily because the bad guy will choose a time and a place to attack. Now we're talking about predators here. They pick the right moment. This situation that you're in is going to be far more intense, far quicker, and more likely to catch you by surprise and off guard than anything else that you're likely to experience when you're trained. And this can be an undoing. The third thing that most people underestimate is how attacks happen. It could be that surprise. It is very rare if someone means you harm that they'll walk straight up to your face, unless they have a vendetta with you. And then you got to ask yourself, what have you done? If someone walks straight up to your face and they attack you, they're pretty stupid. Because at the end of the day, if someone means you harm, then they're going to jump you from behind. They're going to come at you from the side. They're going to make sure that they have every advantage on their side and you have every disadvantage. Often the easiest way to train against these type of scenarios is to train with sudden surprise. Because the truth is that violence is not only close, it's not only fast, but it's also sudden. It doesn't matter how well you can fight in the gym. At the end of the day, you are fighting off the back foot in a self-defense scenario. It's not what you know. The fourth thing that most people get wrong is that there's often more power in a real violent confrontation. When someone attacks you, they surprise you quickly to overwhelm you. And this is the thing that most people find quite difficult to deal with. It's that saying, the punch you don't see is the one that knocks you out. And that's so true. Because at least if you see the punch, you get a chance to naturally brace for that impact. The point is, if you have no awareness and you don't see the punch, is going to be much more powerful than you expected. And this comes back to bad guys setting up. They look for weakness. And at the end of the day, even if it's a social situation where ego violence is at hand, if anyone's got half a brain and they mean you harm, they're going to ambush you. They're going to sucker punch you from the side, or they're going to come at you from behind. But either way, actually that could be taken the wrong way, couldn't it? Get this video demonetized straight away. One misconception that most people lack in their own training is that they don't deal with realistic power of an attack. Even in the gym, you don't get hit as hard. Well, actually, I suppose it depends on what gym you train at, but the intention shouldn't be to kill you. But then having said that, depends where you train, right? So how do we prepare for these truths? Well, firstly, I think you have to acknowledge them. And that's where most people get wrong. They're still stuck in this unrealistic view of what violent confrontations are. So what's the takeaway? Well, there's a logical scheme to violence. And if you understand that logical scheme for violence, it'll make it a lot easier for you to defend yourself or even prepare to defend yourself. But if you underestimate what you're dealing with, you'll often find that you'll struggle with the basic reality of confrontations. For the uninitiated, real violence is something they only see on Netflix. This will have a compounding effect on how you train to defend yourself. And if you can come to terms with these 4 key areas of a violent confrontation, you'll turbocharge your ability to fight back. Because fundamentally, it doesn't matter how well you can fight, what your weapon skills are. If you don't have something up here that drives those skills, that gives you the bedrock to fight back, you don't have strong mental fortitude, in other words, then you're going to fail at the first hurdle. Or should we say fall at the first hurdle? So the idea is to build this into your training. Try to build scenarios where you're actually dealing with surprise, dealing with anxiety, dealing with full power, dealing with unpredictability. Now, these things sound great in hindsight. It's always going to be difficult to recreate these situations in a gym, in a martial arts studio. Because the reality is, even if we make it as difficult as we can for you, you still know that it's a safe environment. So what's the workaround? Well, I think the workaround starts here first than it does anywhere else. Once you start to embrace these realities and accept the possibility of violence, once you take your mind into a place of understanding what real confrontations and what real violence feels and sees in your subconscious mind, then adding in physical skills above that, your physical fighting skills, your self-defense skills, your weapon skills, your awareness skills, all of these are things that you should build on a platform of good mindset and the perfect fight psychology.